The alarm bells rang through the Galactic Council station like thunder. Admiral Vex Kane rushed to the command center, his forearms moving quickly over the controls. On the main screen, a ship appeared that made his heart stop beating. The Earth colony ship, Times Sarang Times, floated in space like a ghost from the past. 15 years ago, it had vanished without a trace, while carrying 10,000 human colonists to a new world. Every search had failed. Every hope had died. Now it was back. All ships, battle positions. Admiral Vex Kane ordered. His voice shook despite his training. Do not let it move closer to the station. Captain Lee Min-jun appeared on the communication screen. He looked older than he should after 15 years. But his eyes were calm and kind. This is the Earth colony ship Times Sarang **. We request safe passage to Earth. We carry no hostile intent. Where have you been? Admiral Vex Kane demanded. Your ship vanished 15 years ago. 10,000 souls were lost. We held funeral services. We are sorry for the worry we caused, Captain Lee said softly. We were learning. All our people are alive and well, but we need to return home now. Admiral Vex Kane studied the readouts from his sensors. The numbers made no sense. The Times, Sarang Times, showed energy patterns that broke every known law of physics. The readings suggested weapons powerful enough to crack planets like eggs. Captain Lee, our sensors detect massive weapons systems on your ship. Weapons that should not exist. You will submit to immediate inspection or be destroyed. Captain Lee was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with sadness. Admiral, we carry weapons, yes, but not the kind you think. We carry weapons that could end all war forever, but they come with a price that no civilization has ever been willing to pay. In the council chambers, representatives from 50 different species watched the screens in fear. The Kresh ambassador hissed through his sharp teeth. Humans have always been dangerous. Now, they return with planet-killer weapons. We must act. 1. The Vex Queen clicked her mandibles nervously. My people remember Earth's military history. If they have found weapons beyond our understanding, we are all in danger. Only Ambassador Choi Hae-jin from Earth sat quietly. She had known Captain Lee before the Times Sarang Times left. He was a good man, who loved peace more than war. But even she felt afraid of what 15 years in the unknown might have done to him and his people. Dr. Park So-young appeared beside Captain Lee on the screen. She was the ship's xenobiologist, known for her gentle way with alien life forms. Council members, we understand your fear. We were afraid too when we first found what we found. It is meant to save. Then submit to inspection, Admiral Vex Kane repeated. Prove your peaceful intentions. Commander Kim Tae-hyun stepped into view. As the ship's security chief, he had always been serious and careful. Now he looked tired, like he carried a great weight. Admiral, inspection would be dangerous, not to you, but to your crews. What we have learned, it changes people. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand it, you cannot go back to the way things were. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had fought each other for centuries suddenly agreed on one thing. The humans were hiding something terrible. They speak in riddles, shouted the Kresh ambassador. This is how conquerors always begin. First, they claim to bring peace. Then, they demand surrender. But Ambassador Choi studied Captain Lee's face on the screen. She had known him for 20 years. She had seen him cry when rescue missions failed. She had watched him give his own food to hungry alien refugees. This was not the face of a conqueror. Captain Lee, she said quietly, what did you find out there? Lee looked directly at her through the screen. We found the truth, Hae-jin. We found what happens when a species becomes too advanced for its own good. We found the ruins of a civilization that had everything we dream of having. And we found why they are not here anymore. Admiral Vex Kane felt ice in his veins. You found weapons from a dead civilization? We found their final gift, Dr. Park said. The last thing they created before they destroyed themselves. It is beautiful and terrible at the same time. It could save us all, or it could end us all. But not in the way you think. Commander Kim stepped forward. Admiral, you asked about weapons. Yes, we have them. But they do not kill bodies. They kill the ability to hurt others without feeling their pain. They kill the comfortable distance that lets us make others suffer. They kill war itself by making it impossible to bear. The council fell silent. This was not what they had expected to hear. Captain Lee spoke again. 15 years ago, we left to find a new home for humanity. Instead, we found a new way for all of us to live. But it requires courage that most species have never shown. It requires becoming vulnerable in ways that terrify the strong. Give us these weapons, Admiral Vex Kane demanded. If they can end war, the Council must control them. No, Lee said sadly. That is not how they work. They cannot be controlled by governments or military forces. They only work when chosen freely by individuals who accept their price. What price? Ambassador Choi asked, though she feared the answer. The price of feeling everything, Dr. Park whispered. The price of understanding your enemies so completely that you can never hate them again. The price of carrying the weight of everyone's pain as if it were your own. The screen went dark. The Times Sarong Times waited silently in space, surrounded by the largest fleet in galactic history. Inside the ship, 10,000 humans who had paid that price waited to see if their galaxy was ready to learn what they had learned. Admiral Vex Kane stared at the dark screen. What have they become? He whispered. 3 days later, Captain Lee Min-jun walked through the corridors of Harmony Station, the Council's neutral meeting place. His footsteps echoed in the empty halls. Most of the station's population had been moved to safe areas, leaving only essential personnel and the Council representatives who demanded answers. Dr. Park So-young walked beside him, carrying a small device that looked like a combination of medical scanner and quantum computer. Commander Kim Tae-hyun followed behind them, his eyes constantly watching for threats that never came. The Council had promised safe passage, and they kept their word. Are you ready for this? Dr. Park asked quietly. Once we show them, everything changes. Captain Lee nodded. They deserve to know, even if they are not ready to understand. The meeting room was massive, designed to hold representatives from dozens of different species. Ambassador Choi Hae-jin sat at the human delegation table, looking worried. Around the room, alien representatives watched the three humans with mixtures of fear and curiosity. Admiral Vex Kane spoke first. Captain Lee, you have kept us waiting long enough. Our scientists have analyzed your ship from a distance. The energy readings suggest weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The Council demands an explanation. Captain Lee sat down slowly. Admiral, we understand your fear. 15 years ago, we shared that fear. We thought weapons meant destruction. We thought power meant the ability to hurt others more than they could hurt us. The Kresh ambassador leaned forward, his reptilian features sharp with suspicion. Then what did you learn in the darkness beyond our borders? What changed your understanding? Dr. Park activated her device. A hologram appeared above the table, showing the image of a dead world. The surface was covered with beautiful crystal structures that caught light like frozen music. We found the homeworld of the species we call the Builders, Dr. Park said. They were ancient when our civilizations were young. They had technology we can barely understand. They could move planets, create life, travel between dimensions. They had everything any species could want. Where are they now? Asked the Vex Queen, her insect-like head tilting with interest. Gone, Commander Kim said simply. They destroyed themselves. Not with weapons of war, but with weapons of peace. The room erupted in confused voices. The Kresh ambassador hissed. That makes no sense. How can weapons of peace destroy a civilization? Captain Lee stood up and walked to the hologram. The builders reached a point where they could end all conflict forever. They created devices that could make war impossible. But they were afraid to use them. Afraid of peace? Admiral Vex Kane asked. Why would anyone fear the end of war? Dr. Park changed the hologram. Now it showed ancient builder writings, translated into galactic common language. Because true peace requires something most species cannot give. It requires giving up the comfortable distance that lets us hurt others without feeling their pain. Ambassador Choi studied the writings. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Not weapons that destroy bodies. Commander Kim said. Weapons that destroy the ability to see others as less important than yourself. Weapons that force you to feel what your enemies feel. To understand their fears, their loves, their reasons for fighting. The Vex Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. Forced empathy? That is impossible. And even if it were possible, it would be a form of mental attack. Yes, Captain Lee said sadly. That is what the builders thought too. They created the technology, but could never bring themselves to use it. They were too afraid of losing their individual identity, their privacy, their ability to make hard choices without feeling the full weight of consequences. The hologram changed again, showing builder cities in their final days. The images were beautiful and terrible. Perfect beings living in perfect isolation, unable to connect with each other even as their civilization crumbled around them. They had everything except understanding, Dr. Park said. They could create stars but could not create trust. They could travel across the universe but could not bridge the distance between one heart and another. Admiral Vex Kane was quiet for a long moment. You said you found their weapons. These empathy devices. Do you have them with you? We are them, Commander Kim said quietly. We do not carry the weapons. We have become the weapons. The room went completely silent. Every representative stared at the three humans with new eyes. 15 years ago, we found the builder ruins, Captain Lee continued. We found their final message. They left their technology behind as a warning and a gift. A warning about what happens when beings become too advanced to feel for each other, and a gift for any species brave enough to pay the price they could not pay. What price? Ambassador Choi whispered. Dr. Park looked directly at her old friend. The price of feeling everything. When we activated their devices, we gained the ability to sense the emotions of any sentient being near us. We feel their fear, their joy, their pain, their love. We cannot turn it off. We cannot go back to the comfortable numbness of not knowing how our actions affect others. The Kresh ambassador leaned back in his chair. That sounds like torture. Why would anyone choose such a burden? Because it works, Captain Lee said simply. In 15 years, no one on the Time Sarang Times has committed an act of violence. Not because we are controlled, but because we cannot bear to cause pain when we feel it as our own. We cannot lie because we feel the hurt that lies cause. We cannot hate because we understand too well why others act as they do. Admiral Vex Kane studied the humans with new fear. You are asking us to give up our privacy, our independence, our ability to make hard military decisions. We are asking nothing, Commander Kim said. We are only showing you what we found. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. The Vex Queen stood up suddenly. This is dangerous beyond measure. If such technology exists, it must be controlled by the Council. It must be used carefully, strategically. Dr. Park shook her head. It cannot be controlled. It can only be chosen. The builder technology only works on those who accept it willingly. and once accepted, it cannot be removed. Then you are asking us to surrender our ability to defend ourselves, the Kresh ambassador said angrily. You are asking us to become vulnerable to any species that does not share this weakness. Captain Lee looked around the room at all the frightened faces. We are not asking you to become vulnerable. We are showing you how to become truly strong. Strong enough to face the truth about how much harm we cause each other. Strong enough to feel the weight of our choices. Strong enough to build something better than endless war. The room was quiet again. Each representative thought about what they had heard. The humans waited patiently, feeling the waves of fear, anger, and confusion, washing over them from every direction. Finally, Admiral Vex Kane spoke. If what you say is true, prove it. Show us these weapons in action. Quote, Captain Lee nodded sadly. We hoped you would not ask that. Because once we show you, you will never be able to forget what you see. The planet Kepler 442b had been torn by war for 60 years. The reptilian Kresh claimed it as their ancestral nesting ground. The insectoid Vex said it was a sacred hive world from their ancient past. Both species had valid claims. Both had shed rivers of blood defending those claims. General Yoon Suk Jin stood on a hill overlooking the contested valley, watching through his field glasses as Kresh and Vex forces faced each other across a stretch of burned earth. The two armies had agreed to a temporary ceasefire to witness the human demonstration. Neither side trusted the humans, but both hoped to claim whatever new weapons technology the times Sarang times carried. Are you certain about this, General? Asked Dr. Park, so young, through the communicator. She remained aboard the Times, Sarang times in orbit, monitoring the quantum field generators that would make the demonstration possible. As certain as one can be about something that has never been tried on this scale, General Yoon replied. He was a career soldier who had fought in 3 different wars before joining the Times Sarang Times mission. Now, after 15 years of living with forced empathy, the thought of battle made him physically sick. Captain Lee Min-jun's voice came through the comm. Remember, General, the field affects everyone within a 5-kilometer radius. That includes you and our team. General Yoon looked at the 5 humans with him on the hillside. They all knew what was coming. They had volunteered anyway. We understand, Captain. Begin when ready. Quote. Below in the valley, Commander Thask of the Kresh 47th Legion checked his plasma rifle one more time. He had been fighting on this world for 8 years. His scales bore scars from dozens of battles. He hated the clicking, buzzing Vex with every fiber of his being. They were invaders who defiled sacred Kresh soil with their presence. Across the battlefield, Wing Commander Zix, 9 of the Vex 2nd Swarm, cleaned her blade arms with practiced precision. She had lost 3 sister queens to Kresh attacks. The reptilian monsters were brutal killers who showed no mercy to Vex young. They deserved nothing but death. Both commanders watched the strange human device being set up on the hill between their armies. It looked nothing like a weapon. No gun barrels, no missile ports, no energy projectors, just a collection of crystalline structures connected by cables of unknown material. What kind of weapon has no obvious offensive capability? Commander Thask asked his aide. Perhaps it is a new type of area denial system, the young Kresh soldier suggested. Something that makes the ground uninhabitable. Wing Commander Zix-9 was thinking similar thoughts. The humans claim they can end this war in minutes. If they can do that, we must capture their technology for the swarm. General Yoon activated his communicator. All forces, please note that this demonstration will affect every living being in the area. We cannot predict exactly what you will experience, but we promise you will not be physically harmed. Get on with it, human, Commander Thask snarled. Show us this miracle weapon of yours. Roof. Dr. Park's voice came from orbit. Activating quantum empathy field in 3, 2, 1. Now. The device on the hill began to glow with soft blue light. Energy patterns invisible to normal eyes spread out from the crystalline structures like ripples in a pond. The field passed over the human team first, washing through General Yoon and his people like warm water. Then it reached the creche lines. Commander Thask felt something strange happening in his mind. At first, it was just a tickling sensation, like someone whispering just too quietly to understand. Then, the whispers became clearer. Fear, homesickness, love for family, far away. But these were not his feelings. Across the battlefield, Wing Commander Zix-9 stumbled as alien emotions crashed into her consciousness. Loneliness, pride in military service, worry about eggs in distant nests, grief for fallen comrades. These feelings were too warm, too individual to belong to a member of the swarm. The empathy field spread through both armies like wildfire. Suddenly, every soldier could feel the emotions of the enemies they had been prepared to kill. Creche warriors felt the Vex soldiers' fierce loyalty to their sisters. Vex fighters felt the Creche troops' deep love for their young. Commander Thask looked across the battlefield at Wing Commander Zix-9 and felt her terror at the strange mental invasion. But underneath the terror, he felt something else. Longing for peace. Exhaustion from years of war. A desperate wish to return home to a swarm hive that smelled like family. Wing Commander Zix-9 stared at Commander Thask and felt his confusion and fear. But she also felt his genuine belief that this world was sacred to his people. She felt his grief for soldiers who had died defending what he saw as holy ground. She felt his hope that someday his own children might nest safely in these caves. A young Creche soldier dropped his weapon. He could feel the homesickness of the Vex warrior in front of him. A feeling so strong, it brought tears to his reptilian eyes. The Vex warrior lowered her blade arms, overwhelmed by the young Creche's terror at the thought of killing someone who missed her sisters so badly. General Yoon watched through his field glasses as 60 years of war died in 60 seconds. Across the battlefield, soldiers on both sides were laying down their weapons, sitting on the ground, staring at each other with new understanding. Commander Thask walked slowly toward the center of the battlefield. Wing Commander Zix-9 met him there. They stood facing each other. Two career soldiers who had spent years trying to kill each other. "I can feel your pain," Commander Thask said quietly. "The loss of your sister queens. I am sorry for your suffering." "I feel yours too," Wing Commander Zix-9 replied. "The weight of responsibility for your troops. The fear that you might fail to protect what is sacred to your people. I never understood before." Then the weight, also, with scene, the 5-17. Around them, Creche and Vex soldiers were talking to each other for the first time in decades. Not negotiating or threatening, just talking. Sharing stories about home, about family, about why they fought and what they hoped to protect. General Yoon activated his communicator. "Captain Lee, the demonstration is complete. The effect is remarkable." Dr. Park's voice was filled with sadness. "And now you understand why the builders were afraid to use this technology. How do you make military decisions when you feel the full weight of every life affected by those decisions? How do you fight wars when you cannot stop feeling your enemy's love for their families?" On the hillside, one of General Yoon's team members was weeping openly. "I can feel all of them," she whispered. "Every soldier down there. Their hopes, their fears, their reasons for being here. How did we ever convince ourselves that some people mattered less than others?" In orbit aboard the Times, Sarang *, Captain Lee watched the scene through the ship's sensors. Every human on the ship could feel the emotional transformation happening on the planet below. They shared the relief of soldiers laying down arms. They shared the wonder of enemies becoming friends. But they also shared the terrible responsibility of knowing that they had changed these beings forever. "The field will fade in a few hours, Doctor," Park announced. "But the memory of what they felt will remain. Some of them will choose to find ways to make the connection permanent. Others will try to forget and return to the old ways. General Yoon looked down at the battlefield where former enemies were sitting together, sharing water and stories. Which path did we choose? We chose to remember, Captain Lee said quietly. We chose to carry the weight of understanding, even when it breaks our hearts. Commander Thask and Wing Commander Zix-9 were still talking in the center of the field. Neither wanted to be the first to walk away. For the first time in their lives, they truly understood what their enemy fought for. For the first time in 60 years of war, peace seemed possible on Kepler 442b. 3 days after the demonstration on Kepler 442b, the council chambers were silent as death. Representatives from 50 species sat in their seats, watching the main screen, where Captain Lee Min-jun prepared to tell the full story of the Times Sarang's Times journey. Ambassador Choi Hae-jin had not slept since the demonstration. The reports from the planet below were impossible to ignore. 2 armies that had fought for 60 years were now working together to build temporary shelters. Former enemies were sharing food and medical supplies. The change was real. But so was the horror of what it meant. 15 years ago, Captain Lee began. We left Earth with 10,000 colonists seeking a new home. We were heading for Kepler 442c, a world that promised fresh starts and new hope. We never reached that world. The screen behind him showed star maps marking the Times Sarang's Times planned route and its actual path through unknown space. Dr. Park So-young and Commander Kim Tae-hyun stood beside him, their faces carrying the weight of 15 years of impossible knowledge. 3 months into our journey, we encountered a gravitational anomaly. Dr. Park continued. Our ship was pulled off course into a region of space that does not appear on any galactic charts. We found ourselves in a system with 12 dead worlds orbiting a dying star. The screen changed to show images of lifeless planets covered in beautiful crystalline structures. The ruins were hauntingly lovely, like frozen music made of light and shadow. The 4th planet showed signs of advanced civilization, Commander Kim said. We sent exploration teams to investigate. What we found changed us forever. Admiral Vex Kane leaned forward in his seat. You found the builders. We found their ruins, Captain Lee corrected, and their final message to the universe. The screen showed the inside of a builder structure. The architecture was beyond anything known to galactic science, with walls that seemed to bend space and chambers that defied geometric logic. In the center of the largest room stood a device that looked like a tree made of crystal and light. The builders were ancient when the first galactic civilizations began, Dr. Park explained. They had technology that could reshape reality itself. They could create matter from pure energy, travel instantly across the universe, communicate with beings in other dimensions. Then what happened to them? Asked the Vex Queen. Captain Lee was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of what he was about to say. They became too advanced for their own good. They reached a point where they could solve every problem except the most important one. The screen changed to show builder writings translated into Galactic Common. The text spoke of loneliness, isolation, and the growing distance between individuals in their perfect society. They could create anything they wanted, but they could not create genuine connection with each other, Commander Kim said. They lived in paradise, but paradise felt empty because they could not truly understand each other's experiences. The writings on the screen showed the builders' growing desperation. They had tried everything: shared virtual realities, direct neural links, artificial telepathy. Nothing worked. The more advanced their technology became, the more isolated they felt. Their final project was the empathy matrix, Dr. Park said softly. A quantum field generator that could force emotional connection between sentient beings. It would make true understanding possible by allowing each person to feel what others felt. Admiral Vex Kane's voice was sharp with suspicion. But they never used it? They were afraid, Captain Lee said simply. Afraid of losing their individual identity. afraid of feeling too much, afraid of the responsibility that comes with understanding how much our actions affect others. The screen showed the builders' last days, perfect beings living in perfect isolation while their civilization crumbled around them. They had everything, except the courage to truly know each other. They left the empathy matrix as a warning and a gift, Commander Kim explained. A warning about what happens when beings become too advanced to feel for each other, and a gift for any species brave enough to pay the price they could not pay. Ambassador Choi spoke for the first time. What happened when you found it? Captain Lee looked directly at his old friend. We debated for months about whether to activate it. We knew it would change us forever. We knew there would be no going back. The screen showed scenes from the Times Sarang times during those difficult months. Colonists arguing in meeting halls. Scientists running endless tests on the builder technology. Children playing in corridors while adults struggled with decisions that would affect everyone's future. In the end, we chose to take the risk, Dr. Park said. A small group of volunteers agreed to be the first test subjects. I was one of them. The images on the screen shifted to show Dr. Park 15 years younger, standing with 20 other volunteers in the builder chamber. They looked nervous, but determined. The moment the field activated, everything changed, she continued. Suddenly, I could feel what everyone else in the room was feeling. Fear, hope, love, doubt, courage, all of it, flowing through my mind like a river of emotion. Commander Kim stepped forward. At first, it was overwhelming. Imagine feeling the emotions of 20 people at once, all mixed together with your own feelings. We thought we had made a terrible mistake. But then we began to understand, Captain Lee said. We could feel why each person had volunteered. We could sense their deepest fears and their greatest hopes. We knew, without any doubt, that every person in that room was just as real and important as we were. The screen showed the volunteers in the days following the activation. They moved differently, spoke more carefully, treated each other with a gentleness that seemed almost supernatural. The field effect faded after a few hours, Dr. Park explained. But something permanent had changed in our brains. We retained the ability to sense emotions in others. We could not turn it off. We could not go back to the comfortable numbness of not knowing how our actions affected people. Admiral Vex Kane was beginning to understand the horror of what he was hearing. You are saying that every person on your ship chose to accept this enhancement? Not at first, Commander Kim admitted. It took months for everyone to decide. We made it completely voluntary. No pressure, no requirements. But once people saw how the volunteers had changed, how much kinder and more understanding they had become, most chose to join them. The screen showed scenes from the Times Sarang times over the following years. Children playing games where everyone won. Adults resolving conflicts through patient conversation instead of anger. Scientists working together without ego or competition. It looked like paradise, but the humans' faces showed the weight they carried. We spent 15 years learning to live with permanent empathy, Captain Lee said. Learning to make decisions when you feel the full weight of how those decisions affect others. Learning to discipline children when you feel their hurt and confusion. Learning to defend yourself when you feel your attacker's desperation and fear. Ambassador Choi was staring at the screen with growing horror. You gave up your ability to act without feeling the consequences. Yes, Dr. Park said simply. We gave up the comfortable distance that lets people make others suffer without understanding the cost. The Kresh ambassador stood up suddenly. This is madness. How do you make military decisions? How do you punish criminals? How do you govern a society when you feel everyone's pain as your own? Very carefully, Commander Kim replied. and with far more success than we ever had before. Crime on the Times Sarang Times dropped to almost zero. Not because we controlled people, but because potential criminals could feel the pain their actions would cause. Conflicts were resolved through genuine understanding rather than force. The Vex Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. But at what cost? You have made yourselves vulnerable to anyone who does not share this limitation. Oh. Captain Lee nodded sadly. Yes. We can no longer lie effectively because we feel the hurt that lies cause. We cannot manipulate others because we feel their confusion and betrayal. We cannot make decisions based purely on self-interest because we feel how those decisions affect everyone around us. The room was completely silent. Every representative was beginning to understand what the humans were offering. Not just a weapon that could end war, but a fundamental change to what it meant to be a sentient being. This is why the Council must control this technology, Admiral Vex Kane said finally. It is too dangerous to be left in the hands of one species. It cannot be controlled, Dr. Park said quietly. The empathy matrix only works on those who choose to accept it, and once you accept it, you can never return to the way you were before. We are not offering you weapons. We are offering you evolution. Captain Lee looked around the room at all the frightened faces. We came back to give you a choice. The same choice the builders were too afraid to make. You can continue living the way you always have, comfortable in the distance that lets you hurt others without feeling their pain. Or you can choose to become something more. The silence stretched on. In that silence, every representative thought about what it would mean to feel their enemy's fear, to sense their opponent's love for family, to understand, beyond any doubt, that every person they had ever dismissed or hurt was just as real and important as themselves. It was a terrifying thought. 1 week later, the largest gathering of ships in galactic history floated in orbit around Earth. Representatives from every known species had come to witness the final decision about the human empathy weapons. Some came hoping to claim the technology for themselves. Others came to ensure it was destroyed forever. Captain Lee Minjun stood on the observation deck of the Times Sarang Asterisk, looking down at the blue and green world where humanity had begun its journey to the stars. Beside him, Dr. Park So-young and Commander Kim Tae-hyun watched the massive alien fleet with sadness in their eyes. They are afraid, Dr. Park said softly, feeling the waves of fear and anger radiating from the alien ships. After 15 years of forced empathy, the three humans could sense emotions across vast distances. They have every right to be afraid, Commander Kim replied. We are offering to change the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Most species would rather face extinction than face that level of transformation. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear the debates raging in the council chambers aboard the flagship. The arguments had been going on for days, growing more heated as each species realized the true implications of the human discovery. Admiral Vex Kane's voice came through the speakers, addressing the assembled representatives. The human technology represents an existential threat to galactic civilization as we know it. If such weapons exist, they must be contained or destroyed. Ambassador Choi Hae-jin's response was calm but firm. Admiral, we are not discussing weapons of mass destruction. We are discussing weapons of mass understanding. The choice to use them must remain with each individual being. The Kresh ambassador hissed his disagreement. Individual choice means nothing if some species adopt this technology while others do not. Those who accept forced empathy will be helpless against those who maintain the ability to act without feeling their enemy's pain. Captain Lee activated the ship's communication system. Council members, you misunderstand the nature of what we offer. The empathy enhancement cannot be used as a weapon against unwilling subjects. It only affects those who choose to accept it. Wing Commander Zix, 9 of the Vex, who had experienced the demonstration on Kepler 442b, spoke up. But Captain Lee, What about those of us who felt the field during your demonstration? We did not choose to experience that level of emotional connection. The temporary field was necessary to show you what permanent empathy feels like, Dr. Park explained. But the lasting enhancement only occurs when someone consciously accepts the change. The field we used for the demonstration has no permanent effects, unless the subject actively chooses to make them permanent. In the council chambers, the debate grew more intense. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves agreeing on one thing. The human technology was too dangerous to allow. Think about what this means for military commanders, Admiral Vex Kane argued. How can a general order troops into battle when they feel the terror of every soldier under their command? How can a leader make strategic decisions when they experience the suffering of everyone affected by those decisions? Commander Kim's voice came through the comm system with quiet authority. Admiral, in 15 years aboard the Times Sarang Asterisk, we have faced pirates, system failures, disease outbreaks, and resource shortages. Our leaders made every necessary decision. The difference is that we made those decisions with full awareness of their cost in human suffering. And were your decisions better for that awareness? Asked the Vex Queen. Our decisions were more careful, Captain Lee replied. More thoughtful. We found solutions that minimized harm, because we could not escape the weight of that harm. We saved lives because we could not bear to waste them. The debate continued for hours. Most species demanded that the technology be turned over to the Council for study and control. The humans patiently explained, again and again, that the empathy enhancement could not be controlled by governments or institutions. It was a personal choice that each being had to make for themselves. Finally, Ambassador Choi stood to address the Council. Representatives, we seem to be missing the most important point in this discussion. The question is not whether the Council should control this technology. The question is whether our civilizations are mature enough to choose connection over isolation. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Vex Kane. Krieing? Dr. Park answered from the Times Sarang Asterisk. The empathy matrix is not just a human discovery. Every species will eventually face the same choice the builders faced. As your technology advances, as your societies become more complex, you will reach a point where you can have everything except genuine understanding between individuals. The builders chose isolation and died alone in their perfect cities, Commander Kim added. We chose connection and found something worth living for. But the choice is not ours to make for you. Captain Lee stood up, feeling the weight of what he was about to reveal. Council members, there is something else you need to know. The empathy enhancement is not confined to those who use the builder technology. The council chambers fell silent. What are you saying? Admiral Vex Kane asked. The enhancement spreads naturally through extended contact with those who already have it, Dr. Park explained. Not by force, not through infection, but through inspiration. People who work closely with empathically enhanced individuals sometimes develop similar abilities through choice and practice. Ambassador Choi felt a chill run down her spine. How many people are we talking about? On Earth, approximately 50,000 people have voluntarily developed empathic enhancement through contact with our crew members' families, Captain Lee said. The number grows every day, but only among those who actively choose to develop these abilities. The implications hit the Council like a thunderbolt. The technology was already spreading, not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple process of people wanting to become more like the enhanced humans they met. This is what we feared, the Kresh ambassador said angrily. You are transforming humanity into something that will make the rest of us obsolete. No, Commander Kim said firmly. We are offering to teach anyone who wants to learn. The choice remains yours. Wing Commander Zix-9 spoke up from her position in the council chambers. I was present during the demonstration on Kepler 442b. For 3 hours, I felt what my enemies felt. I understood their pain, their love for their families, their genuine belief that they were fighting for something sacred. Since then, I have not been able to return to the comfortable hatred I once felt for the creche. Commander Thask, who was also present via hologram from the planet below, nodded agreement. The experience changed how I see warfare, not because I was forced to change, but because I finally understood what war really costs. I cannot unknow what I learned that day. Captain Lee felt the emotions of everyone in the fleet. Fear from the military commanders who saw their strategic advantages disappearing. Hope from the diplomats who imagined conflicts resolved through understanding instead of force. Curiosity from the scientists who wondered what other limitations they might overcome. And underneath it all, a deep longing for something better than the cycle of war and suffering that had defined galactic civilization for millennia. We are not asking you to surrender your independence, Captain Lee said. We are not demanding that you accept our enhancement. We are simply offering to teach those who want to learn, to share what we have discovered about the power of genuine understanding. Ambassador Choi stood up in the council chamber. The question before us is not whether to accept or reject the human technology. The question is whether we want to continue living as we always have, or whether we are brave enough to choose something better. Admiral Vex Kane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of command. If we allow this technology to spread, it will change everything. Our military structures, our political systems, our entire way of life. Yes, Dr. Park said simply, it will change everything. The question is whether that change frightens you more than the thought of continuing as we are. The vote, when it came, was not about whether to control or destroy the human technology. It was about whether to allow the humans to establish empathy training centers throughout the galaxy for those who chose to learn. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Not because most species were ready to embrace empathic enhancement, but because enough representatives understood that trying to stop voluntary evolution was both impossible and wrong. As the alien fleets prepared to depart, small groups of representatives quietly approached the Times Serang Times to request private meetings. Scientists curious about the biological mechanisms of empathy. Diplomats hoping to learn new conflict resolution techniques. Military officers wondering if there might be a better way to protect their people than endless preparation for war. Captain Lee watched the departing ships and felt the mixture of hope and fear radiating from their crews. Change would come slowly, one individual at a time. Some species would embrace empathic enhancement quickly. Others might take generations to accept it. A few might never choose that path. Do you think we did the right thing? Dr. Park asked. Commander Kim placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling her uncertainty and offering comfort through the empathic link they shared. We gave them a choice. That is all anyone can do. Captain Lee looked down at Earth, where millions of humans were already learning to live with expanded empathy. Not because they were forced to, but because they had seen what their enhanced neighbors could accomplish through understanding instead of conflict. The builders were wrong about one thing, he said quietly. They thought that accepting empathy meant losing themselves. Instead, we discovered that understanding others completely is the only way to truly understand ourselves. The Times Serang Times turned toward Earth, carrying its crew home after 15 years in the unknown. Behind them, the first empathy training center was already being established on a neutral world. Staffed by volunteers from a dozen different species who had chosen to learn what the humans had learned. It was not the end of war. It was not the beginning of perfect peace. But it was the start of something new. A galaxy where understanding was possible, where enemies could become friends, and where the comfortable distance that allowed suffering could be bridged by those brave enough to feel.